Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now, today's video is going to be about the dark side of the food and drug industry. Now, I've had this topic that I wanted to discuss. It's been in my mind for a while now, and food has definitely been a part of our culture. When we come together as family, friends get together, social events, things of this nature. Food, we know food is always going to be a part of our lives. We can't go to a certain place or a certain event without, some type of food. Food is what, come brings us together, brings us closer together. And, you know, certain foods that, especially in this country, play a big part in our everyday lives. It plays a big part in our health, our consciousness, how we behave, how we act. And, sometimes we don't even think about these things. So you have certain conglomerates, uh certain people, certain groups, Congress, food companies, different type of industries. They they play a big part in how food is being distributed in this country, the things that are being added into the food, uh, how food is, packaged, manufactured, and things like this. So most of us, we really don't take the time, we don't take the effort to do some research when it comes to the food, the type of foods that we're eating, right? America is ranked 37th in the world when it comes to health and nutrition. We think that we're eating all these different types of foods, eating 3 meals a day, and you expect us to be, well fed and well nourished and things like that, but that's not the case at all. See, the foods that we eat, they have no nutritional value. Most of these foods they have all types of chemicals, additives, preservatives, pesticides, they're they're not even it's not even real food at this point. And we don't have healthcare, we have sick care, right? We put all these finances, all this money into healthcare, so-called healthcare, but we have more people becoming sick, having, certain ailments, diseases, more people dying every year than ever before, but we have, you know, all this money coming in towards healthcare. So, you know, I'm going to be going deep in depth in this video. So this might be a long video. So I need you to, you guys to sit back, relax, try to soak as much information as you can. Because I'm going to be I'm going to be going into the nitty gritty on this one. So without further ado, let's not waste any time. Let's go and get started. Let me share my screen. All right, so this is the dark side of the food and drug industry. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, let's go over some key facts about the magnificence of the human body. Let's get to know our bodies a little bit more. So the stomach's digestive acids are strong enough to digest zinc and the tissues around it. But the cells replenish, so it's kind of hard for the tissues to, disintegrate because the cells are constantly replenishing. The brain produces the electrical energy equivalent to a 20-watt light bulb. You will need 82,000 processors for a supercomputer to simulate just 1 second of 1% our brain's capacity. Ounce for ounce, human bone is stronger than granite or steel, yet it weighs 3 times less. A man's testicles can manufacture up to 10 million sperm cells daily. That's why I believe there's an attack on testosterone. There's an attack on men's testosterone. For all these foods with all these different additives and chemicals, it's definitely an attack on men's testosterone. And men can experience things like uh, you know, that men are not able to get hard, the penis not able to get hard, not enough sperm accumulation, men are not performing as well in the bedroom, men become incompetent and things like this. So there's definitely a war on men's testosterone when it comes to the foods that we eat. The human body is made of 7 octillion atoms. 90% of our cells aren't even human in origin. The skin is replaced every 2 weeks. Every 120 days, our entire blood supply is replaced. Every 300 days, we have a new liver. And every 10 years, we get an entirely new skeletal system. So our body is in uh, constant work, constant movement, replenishing cells, replacing blood, cleansing the body. The body is able to cleanse itself. The body is able to manufacture itself and become, replenish itself. So there's a whole lot of different things that the body is capable of doing that we are, either not aware of and we're just not paying attention to. So within the conscious slash spiritual community, some of us tend to blame the body for our downfall towards our spiritual elevation. I tend to do this every now and then. A lot of us tend to do this within the conscious slash spiritual community, but we forget about our body's own miraculous powers functioning and healing, right? So we might experience certain, we might get caught up in, certain type of addictions, or we might do certain things that steer us off from our spiritual path towards our spiritual journey. And, we tend to blame the body, but we have to remember that the body and the spirit are connected. They are one, right? Our spirits have incarnated onto this physical plane, and they have incarnated within the physical body. So the physical body is a part of us. That's why we have to treat the body the same way as we treat the spirit, because they are connected and they are one. So if the body is feeling good, the spirit is feeling good. If the spirit is feeling good, then the body's feeling good. That's why we had to pay attention to make sure that we are putting not just the right foods in our bodies, but the right things mentally, right, and the right things spiritually. So we have to take care of ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually because they are all one. So let's get into the Okinawans. Okay. So the centenarians of Okinawa. So basically, Okinawa is this island, right? The island of Okinawa, Japan, is home to one of the 5 blue zones that exist in the world. So basically, Okinawa, Japan is considered to be the healthiest region in the world. These are some of the healthiest people in the world. They consume an array of vegetables and fruits that are organic, anti-inflammatory, nutritionally dense, and contain phytonutrients capable of stomping out cancer. The Okinawan diet overwhelmingly consists of plant-based foods with a very small percentage of processed foods. Okay, so they go by the phrase "hara hachi bu," which means don't eat until you are full, right? 10 on the scale of 10. Stop at 8. Har, Hadar means stomach. Hachi is the number 8. And Bu means level. So they go by this rule, right? To where, you know, especially here in America, especially here in Western society, we tend to, stuff ourselves with food until we are full. But the Okinawans, they go by, you know, stop eating, at a certain time because it takes the brain time to process when you are full, right? There's this like it's like this lag time. It's like this stagnant lag time when it comes to the brain. So don't eat until you are full. stop at a certain point. So basically, the Okinawa's diet consists of sweet potatoes, right? Specifically, the purple sweet potato, right? Then you have rice, other vegetables, legumes, other grains, fish, meat, poultry, and other foods, right? So their diet consists of mainly a plant-based diet, right? This is what I advocate, right? A plant-based diet, uh, you know, just by showing this, just by, the information that I've given, these people live up to 100 years, right? 100 years plus, right? Now I'm going to show you a video of how these individuals, how the Okinawans live throughout everyday life, right? So this video is by a gentleman named Drew Binsky, right? I've watched a couple of his videos. He's a travel vlogger. He travels all around the world. He's been to many other different countries like Mexico, Spain, certain countries within Africa, China. He travels all around the world. So this video, he stumbles upon the Okinawans, right? So I'm not gonna show everything within this video, but I'm going to show you just a little bit, just a taste, uh, the gist of how the Okinawans live and how they keep themselves up and active.
The island of Okinawa, Japan is known to have the longest life expectancy in the world. What that means is that it's common for people to live well past 100 years old. I came here to find out why Okinawans are able to live such long and healthy lives, and what I discovered will leave you stunned. It's 6:30 a.m. This is a morning exercise for elderly people. How do you feel after doing the morning exercise?
Wonderful.
We can go in?
Oh, please.
Thank you.
Hi, hi.
She's like everybody's favorite grandmother. Where you come in her house, she gives you tea and she gives you food and she makes you feel comfortable. We've just entered the amazing Okinawan kitchen. You have all these little bowls and cabinets here. It's so cool to be in this kitchen right now. We are about to feast. Look at this food. She's been preparing it in the kitchen, homemade, with a perfect touch. Look how many little dishes there are.
Back in time.
Do you enjoy life in your late 80s? Yes.
Volunteer. Volunteer.
See that they don't eat very large
Why are the
portions
people
either,
here able to live so long?
like we tend to do.
Even inside of a house, they move. Oh, they're always moving around inside of the house.
So this
You're not lazy.
No, not lazy. Just like a house chore. House chore. It gives them a good exercise.
This is miso.
Miso, Okinawa miso. This is rice, sashimi, the sea mackerel, stir-fried pumpkin mixed with pork, potato, mixed with Okinawa seaweed called mozuku.
Japanese food is the best of the best, and it's going to be a great meal.
Itadakimasu.
In the U.S., it's very rare that somebody lives to 90. For you, is it normal? Like, most of your friends are still healthy. Do you actually know people that are over 100?
うちのこのおばあちゃん、姑、105歳で亡くなった。
Her mother-in-law passed away at the age of 105.
105. Her mother-in-law.
Yes.
Wow.
That's it, and they always
What
live,
is the key
most
to
of them
living
live
a
to 100
long, happy
plus.
life?
Feel excited and doing many things with people around her.
Okinawa is a chain of tropical islands about 400 miles southwest of mainland Japan. I'm actually closer to Manila than I am to Tokyo, but this is a land that's completely different than the Japan you know of. Something just feels different here. There are no big cities and busy crosswalks. No neon signs, no cherry blossoms, or huge green forests or massive Buddhist temples. Instead, pristine white sanded beaches, hot springs, turquoise water, and beautiful coconut trees. The local dialect here is nowhere near that of mainland Japan. And how can you say arigatou gozaimasu? In short, Okinawa is both a cultural phenomenon and a tropical wonderland with as many beautiful sights and laid-back vibes as the Philippines. This is about as tropical as a beach can get. Look at the sand color. But you might know about Okinawa for other reasons than beauty. It was the site of the largest and deadliest campaign in the Pacific during World War II, mainly between Japan and the USA. Sadly, more than 100,000 casualties were reported, and it was a major turning point in the war, leading to the atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But that was almost 80 years ago, and even though there are reminders of the war around the island, as I'm walking around Okinawa, I can't help but notice the extreme American presence here. The truth is that many generations have passed, and life carries on. So, what's it like to live here?
I mean, you're living like in nature, like so close to nature, which is the best part of it. So, like, we wake up in the morning in the summers, and when it's nice, we come down and we swim, and then we go help out at the farm, and then cook and do whatever.
It sounds like the most ideal
long as you live
lifestyle in
along
the
with
world.
nature, man.
The
You
main
gonna thrive
island
for
is called
sure.
Okinawa Island, which is where the airport and the capital city called Naha are located. It's also
Try
where
to
more
get as
than
much nature as you
90% of
can.
Okinawa's 1.5 million residents are living. But somehow, it's so quiet and still. My reason for coming here is very specific. Okinawa is widely considered as the healthiest place on Earth, and I want to discover why. Everywhere I go here in Okinawa, I see plenty of elderly people just walking around the streets, doing tai chi at the park, riding bikes, or playing this croquet-like game called gateball. And it makes me think, maybe getting old isn't so bad after all.
So this is a monument for the centenarian.
A centenarian is a person who has lived to be 100 years old or longer, and Okinawa literally has hundreds of them. I was lucky enough to meet one centenarian who is so lovely and sweet. When I showed up at her house, she was just chilling at home alone and doing chores all by herself. At 100 years old. I heard that you just turned 100. Congratulations.
ね、おめでとうございます。
That's what I'm trying to get.
If you become centenarian,
They give you this?
yes, the Japanese government, the prime minister will give this certificate.
Wow. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
How does it feel to be 100?
自然になってるからね。
Yeah, we naturally turn 100 years old.
How do you stay busy
That's a
in your
blessing.
day-to-day life?
庭の草い。
Mowing the grass
アイロンしたり。
and ironing
洗濯は
and
洗濯
washing
で。
clothes.
上がるけど。
So she's always just staying busy around the house.
He's training muscle in her
Really?
legs. So she bought that one, the stepping machine.
Really? You're still training? Like that? Wow, that's amazing. Do you receive any help from your kids or anybody in the community? I mean, for getting dressed or bathing, or you do everything by yourself?
それとも全部自分でやる。
自分でやります。
She does everything all by herself.
Wow.
Wow.
Everything all by yourself. That's incredible. You make me look forward to getting older.
ありがとうございます。
As you and I both know, a healthy life starts and ends with cuisine. I was taken around Okinawa by my local friends Mari and Sena, and we couldn't stop eating because the food is that fresh and that tasty.
This is pork from the island,
Oh, that's
and
pork,
about
right?
80% of the
Looks like
vegetables are from Okinawa.
So when you see a plate like this, it begins to make sense why Okinawa is the healthiest place in the world. Oh my
You definitely
god.
see that.
Before I tell you more about what Okinawans eat, there's a valuable lesson in how they eat. Remember this term, hara-hachi-bu. Translation, stop eating when you are 80% full. Why? Because it takes 20 minutes for your stomach to send signals to the brain that it is full. It's important not to spend those 20 minutes shoving food down your throat. Just simply push the plate away. So
We
they,
tend to
Or it's
do.
not overeating.
so they just like, they don't binge eat. Like in the US, we would just keep eating, keep eating.
They'll finish like what's on their plate, but you don't like put way too much on
Yeah.
or anything. So
It's
you,
like portion control.
yeah, yeah.
Okinawa is filled with an abundance of fresh fruits.
All right, you guys get the point. This is how the Okinawans live. This is how they eat. This is how they, stay in shape. They're considered to be the healthiest people in the world. So, yeah, let's move on now. Too many Americans are sick. America has the most expensive and technologically advanced healthcare system in the world, like I mentioned in the beginning. Yet it's not designed to keep you healthy, only to treat you when you're sick. The greatest killers to healthcare of Americans are heart disease and stroke. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 cause of death for both men and women in the U.S. So they can't, they're not able to profit off of curing diseases, right? They can't profit off of slow deaths either. So they profit off of you by keeping you sick, by keeping you in these hospitals, by keeping you eating these unhealthy foods, right? And that's why we have to, like I said, pay more attention to the type of foods that we're eating, doing more research, just looking at our bodies a totally different way, becoming more conscious eaters. Food should be used as our main source of medicine. The use of food as medicine has a long recorded history that spans thousands of years and still remains at the center of healing disease, right? Food should be used as our main source of medicine. We shouldn't be relying on pharmaceutical drugs, pharmaceutical prescription drugs, things like this, right? It's just, in the ancient times, thousands of years ago, food has always been the center when it comes to healing thyself, healing the body. The use of whole foods to cure disease is a return to the original standard. From as far back as ancient Egypt, there are 3,000-year-old medical texts that document the use of plant-based foods to heal the same ailments we suffer from today. And just like modern humans, subsequent societies embrace advancement over nature, and their well-being suffered as a result. So we have been taken away from nature. We are not even we're not even in touch as a human race. We're not even in touch with nature no more. Right? We become unaligned with nature. Right? And nature forms no lines or shapes. Nature is legitimate. Nature is the true realization of ourselves and our nature and our internal being. Right? So once we get back into nature, that's when we start, aligning ourselves to our divine selves, to our divine, uh, our divine internal reality. So this isn't to put pharmaceutical drugs down. Drugs have life-saving capabilities, but modern medicine can't be the answer because there's so much medical spending, yet Americans are getting sicker and dying earlier in epidemic numbers, right? So, I'm not saying to put pharmaceutical drugs down entirely. You know, pharmaceutical drugs has its uses, it has its benefits, but when we start relying on these things, when we start, you know, relying on that magic pill to cure certain diseases or ailments and things of this nature, when we start relying on outside sources and outside things instead of going from within, instead of putting nutritional foods into our bodies, then that's when we take a negative turn, in our lives. So we have to, understand that the food is the ultimate standard. The food is the ultimate standard that our ancestors have been, you know, implementing to do, right? Having that certain discipline, having that certain mindset to where we have to, you know, think of our bodies in a totally different way. Think about food in a totally different way. So since 1938, over 1,453 drugs have gained FDA approval to cure people of their various illnesses. Yet no one of yet not one of these drugs are able to cure something simple as the common cold. The healthcare system approach to healing rarely addresses the underlying cause. So by default, it can never cure the disease, right? The healthcare system, it doesn't implement cures. It only implements, certain causes, right? It only fixates on the cause and not the it doesn't go within the root cause. It doesn't, figure out what the root cause is, right? Just like the root of the tree, right? It starts, at the tree, it starts at the root. Within the healthcare system, it doesn't try to figure out what the root cause is, right? It only, you know, addresses certain things you know that are not within the root cause of what the problem is. You see what I'm saying? So patients are often misdiagnosed as well. People don't even think about the misdiagnosis of certain patients. This is one of the other major killers of people and different patients. So, for example, if a patient is anemic as a result of vitamin B12 deficiency, but is misdiagnosed and then given folic acid as treatment, the laboratory results will show increased blood cell formation, and you will appear to be cured. Meanwhile, the vitamin B12 deficiency goes unnoticed. It can lead to nerve degeneration and potentially paralysis. So many people are being misdiagnosed. You might have a certain, you know, problem, but you've been misdiagnosed and saying, oh, you have this you know, certain thing about you, and then you might have a certain deficiency on the other end, and then that goes unnoticed, that the doctor or the healthcare professional doesn't address it in any type of way. So these things, you know, pan out and play a part in the healthcare industry, right? In the pharmaceutical industry, right? We don't take the time to understand what the root cause is of the person, right? We're only, we're not addressing that, and that needs to be addressed, right? So that's why holistic healing, they're trying to eliminate holistic healing altogether in this country. Healthcare professionals and patients need to be educated. So most doctors care about the well-being of their patients. I'm not gonna say, all of them are evil and they just want to check, and you have some people that are like that, but I would say most doctors and most healthcare practitioners care about the well-being of their patients. But unfortunately, they are educated by the same system that is funded and educated by Big Pharma. At the vast majority of medical schools, students are not required to take even a single course on the subject of nutrition. And it's only offered at 25% of schools as an elective. The belief that we can eat whatever we want and just take a magic pill to fix our problems is exactly why 70% of all Americans are taking at least one prescription. Right. So many of these doctors and healthcare professionals, they have no knowledge when it comes to holistic, the holistic healing, holistic health, uh, you know, nutrition and things like that, because it's not being offered. It's not being offered in schools, in these medical schools that are owned by, the Rockefellers and all them. Because I remember, I try to get my regular checkup to the doctor every year. And I remember one time last year, I was getting a regular checkup, and the doctor asked me when was the last time I ate, and I said, oh, it's been 3 days, because, I try to fast regularly. So I said, oh, I'm on a 3-day fast. And the doctor, he was looking at me like, are you good? Basically, like, you good? Like, you starving yourself? Like, why are you basically starving yourself? You need to be eating, and all these different things. So most doctors, they don't understand the natural way of healing the body, because they haven't been educated on the subject. I'm not mad at them. I don't blame them, because they're not even being educated on the subject of nutrition. They're not being educated on certain things like fasting and things of this sort. So I'm going to show you this video. This is by Yaki Awaken. If you never heard of Yaki Awaken, I highly encourage you all to check this guy out. He's into holistic healing. He's into he studies the physiological uh parts of the human body. He's into health and healing and things like that. So if you never heard of this guy, I highly encourage you all to check this guy out. So in this video, he's going to be talking about the how Big Pharma started, and how uh, holistic healing is being eliminated and not talked about within this country.
I want want to talk about the Flexner Report released in 1910 that was created by Abraham Flexner and funded by the Carnegie Foundation, and its negative impact on holistic health and how it birthed Big Pharma.
Okay, so I'll tell you a story. There's a man by the name of John D. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller was born in upstate New York. He moved to Ohio when I believe he was 7. Now, I need you.
Notice how individuals such as Rockefeller and them, notice how Rockefeller has been involved with many different factions, such as like the pharmaceutical industry, the public education system, the banking system, the oil industry, and all these different things.
To keep in mind that these are Germans. They're from Germany. They're from Germany. Now they call themselves Jews. These are German converts that converted themselves from German to Judaism. So they really Germans. Now, John D. Rockefeller, he moved to Ohio. He grew up as a bookkeeper. His father actually used to be a pharmaceutical seller. He'd go around with herbs and act like he was healing all these diseases when he wouldn't. That's what his father, ironically, he started doing the same thing. But his father was a tradesman. He was a maintenance man, and he used to travel often. And he used to do magic tricks, and he also used to sell herbs. And he even called himself the cancer healer, or the healer of all times. He literally coined himself that. He never had a degree. He never studied medicine. He never studied diseases, but that was one of his tricks. So he was traveling. While he was traveling, John D. Rockefeller, which came till this day, one of the wealthiest men in history, he used to basically sell turkeys. He used to cut his neighbors' yards and stuff like that. He was your everyday hustler. Well, at the age of 17, he ended up getting him a job as a bookkeeper because he was very good with money and counting. So he ended up getting a job as a bookkeeper, and he worked at this bookkeeping firm, making money for them. And after 2 years, he asked them for a raise, and they didn't give him the raise. Well, when you doing bookkeeping, you build a lot of relationships with millionaires. So what he did was he went to all the relationships he built, and he asked them for $4,000. So they gave him a $4,000 loan. With this $4,000, John D. Rockefeller ended up getting into the stock market, and he started trading animals. He was trading hay. He was trading tires, herbal botanicals, and stuff like that. Around this same time, big oil industry started getting very, very big. So he in Ohio at this time, and he started seeing a lot of oil companies emerge. So he wanted to get into it. So he tried to get into it, but failed miserably. And the reason why is because he didn't know how to find and source his own herbs. So he came up with a brilliant idea to refine oil. So he'd take oil, and let me show you why I'm saying this, because it's what he did with the whole industry, even the pharmaceuticals. So he found out how to go to oil companies, take that oil, refine that oil, and resell it lower than the actual oil companies. This is how he started making his first millions. Not only that, he hired 16 biochemists. And what these biochemists was to do is, with the refined oil, they were supposed to make byproducts from the oil. Things like Vaseline. Everybody uses, especially black people, they use it on their lips. That's actually petroleum oil. Tar that they use for street pavement. That's actually petroleum oil. A lot of the different medical sterilizations that come from petroleum oil. A lot of the stuff that we use right now until this very day are
Yeah, all these different ingredients that he mentioned is all is in our hygiene products, and maybe in some of the food that we're eating right now.
byproducts of petroleum oil. So John D. Rockefeller, he figured out how to take something natural, break it down and utilize it and resell it. But he was left with all these different byproducts that he couldn't do nothing with. So he came up with an evil idea to take the waste of these products and create other products and sell them on the market and drive the profit margin up 200%. So this created him a billionaire. At this same time, Carnegie, the Carnegie family, William Carnegie and them, they was actually funding the railroad industry. So what he did was he said, I need to connect with the Carnegie Foundation and family because now I can make this thing worldwide because it's railroads. So he ended up connecting with the Carnegie family and they created this fund release program. through this fund release program. Meanwhile, in Germany, they creating pharmaceutical drugs. The pharmaceutical drug company actually come from something called the Azodot company. And this is how shirts are pink, red, blue. This come from Germany. It was a bunch of Germans are natural biochemists. They're some of the smartest people in the world. I'll give them that. They very smart because they know how to mix and create chemical outcomes. So they was creating all types of Azodot companies. Most of them Azodot companies, it became very saturated in the market. So what they did was they said, we're not going to make Azodot no more. They was making furniture colors out of Azodot. They was making car paint out of Azodot. They was making different miscellaneous products to, give different shirts, different colors out of Azodot. So they seen how lucrative it was. So it became very saturated in the market in Germany. So one company, they decided to break off and create their first synthetic pharmaceutical company. So what they did was they took natural herbs and they mixed them with azodide chemicals. See that? You still see it today. Have you ever seen red pill?
And 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs that we consume actually come from plant-based origin. They originated as herbs and plants and things of this nature. Like 50% of the drugs they have a plant-based origin.
Blue pills. You got to ask yourself, what colors are those? Them are chemicals created from German. Aspirin, Bayer's, all these are big German companies that are operating in America. But anyways, it started booming in Germany. Remind you, John D. Rockefeller is a German. So he called home. All his family's still there. Only his intermediate family moved to the Americas. So he got all these millions, all these billions, and he created the world's first monopoly, which means he had so much money that he was finna crash the economy to the point where I think it was in 1911, I believe, 1911, the actual federal government created something called an antitrust fund to break up and dissemble his companies because he was taking money from everybody. He had so much money, he was dictating who was going to be in office or not. The government, like, we can't have that no more. He too powerful. So they broke up his companies into small shell companies, thinking that it was going to take the money from him, but it didn't. But a lot of the politics started looking at him bad. So he like, man, look, this oil got me being looked at as bad. I'm gonna become a philanthropist. I'm gonna start giving away a bunch of money. I'm gonna get into charity, and I'm gonna get into healing. So what he did was he came up with an idea because he seen all the companies in Germany creating pharmaceutical companies and how lucrative it was. He said, I'm going to back up out of oil. I'm going to stay chairman over these, but I'm going to back up as the owner. I'm going to own nothing and control everything. And I'm going to move into pharmaceutical drugs. So those same 16 scientists that he had making byproducts of oil and creating Vaseline and tar and all these other things, and gum come from that too. When you chew on gum, you chew on tar and petroleum oil. Facts. Look it up. So he said, hey, 16 biochemists, let's see how we can take this oil, because I got trillions and trillions and trillions of tons of it, and how we can merge this with botanicals and create synthetic drugs. So he took them underground, and man, they realized how to use actual herbs and botanical and to merge them with oils. At this time, it was still booming though. You got the chiropractor industry was just coming out, booming, making millions and millions of dollars. You got the homeopathy industry coming out. They were more into natural herbs, making millions and millions of dollars. And then not alone, you got moms and pops growing their own herbs in their backyard. So natural healing was at an all-time high. So he had to figure out a way to dismantle them. So this is what he did. He went to the Carnegie family and he said, hey, let's create a pot. And with this pot, we're going to fund the actual education system. We're going to give them new books. We're going to build them new schools and all of that. And he was like, well, Carnegie was like, well, we got to talk to somebody that's over the education board and over the medical colleges. So they went to they went to another man that was over the AMA at the time. And this is a journal that basically speaks about regulating the medical field. So they get him on the team. And once they got him on the team, they said, look, we're going to fund you to push a narrative. So they gave him trillions of dollars. And what he did was he said, in order for this to work, though, I need to put somebody on my board, on my seat at the chairman of your table. And he said, all right, you can give me the money and you can put anybody that you want to put on there. Guess what we put on? He put on his brother was Flexner. Flexner had another brother called Abraham. Flexner said, I'm only going to do it if Abraham get on board. And if you look at their background, they was trying to create schools for the last 15 years of their lives, but they kept failing. They kept failing. So he said, this is the way to get on. We got the money, we got the power, we got the people, we can influence through promotion and everything. So what they did was Abraham Flexner and the Carnegie and the Rockefeller Foundation went to every different school and offered to give them money, but it came with a price. In order for me to give you money, you have to basically pass a certain test, and this test is how long you've been in school to call yourself a doctor. So they said, look, so he did his whole report. He said, I feel that they are getting their doctorate in 5 years. I think that's too short. We got to make it 9. You see that? That's why it takes so long to get your doctorates now. I feel like the education system is not right. They're teaching the children wrong about education. They're still teaching about they're still teaching about naturopathy. We want to start pushing petroleum back pharmaceutical drugs. Anybody that's not teaching those, we're going to discredit their schools. So they went around and started discrediting schools. And for those who changed their ways and went into medicine and selling petroleum-backed medicines, they gave them millions of dollars. They gave them books, they rebuilt their schools, and they gave them accreditations. The ones that said they're going to stick to your basic run and gun healing from earth, getting your herbs from the earth, they discredited them, and they didn't give them no money. So now you got schools all around the world that's looking pretty, that they got books, they got better curriculum, they got better equipment, and then you got schools that's really healing that look ran down. Man, within 5 years, all the schools that wasn't receiving money, they drove themselves out of business. Some of them actually got with the program, but most of them was driven themselves out of business because they didn't have no money. So once that worked, all of the healing schools is out. So remember, he's still funding the AMA. The AMA now, since there's so much money behind them, they on every single newspaper. They on every broadcast right now. So now their word is becoming golden. So now they're putting out this narrative that if you are selling herbs, you don't know what you're talking about because it's this new invention, petroleum-backed pharmaceuticals, that's really suppressing disease and healing people of all.
I remember I was watching a a Dr. Sebi interview, right? Dr. Sebi, he's one of the holistic healers that everybody knows and loves, advocates, a plant-based diet, eating certain pH, eating certain foods that are at a certain pH level, things of this nature. And he was telling a story of how he was able to cure his patients from AIDS, diabetes, high blood pressure, all these different ailments. And I remember he was saying that his mom was telling him that they was gonna get him. They was gonna get him because first he was black, and then second he's healing these people of all these ailments, right? Pharmaceutical drugs are not able to do this. So he ended up getting arrested, saying that he was practicing medicine without a license and all these different things. So yeah, when you are going against the grain, right? When you're doing something that's against what is being implemented in society, oh, they're gonna come after you for sure. They're gonna come after you for just like that other guy that's uh making his own gasoline. They got people coming after him, people watching him, and when you're doing something that's out of the ordinary, when you're doing something that's going to revolutionize humanity and help the world in any way, you're gonna get attacked, you're gonna get washed, you're gonna get you know uh, arrested, maybe even killed. You know, killing off all our prophets, killing off all our revolutionaries, innovators, and things of this sort. So that's the world we live in.
Ailments. So what he did was they had so much money and politics and power that they was actually heard by the federal court. That was heard by the federal court to the point that you can't even sue these people for real. You can sue little doctors, but you can't sue John D. Rockefeller and them because all their money is stuck up in the trust. And you can't penetrate a foreign trust. Remember, they from Germany. His trust is out of Germany. Man, these dudes were smart. Evil, but smart. So check this out. They got all the schools shut down. So at this same point that they getting the schools shut down, they say we need a new curriculum. We got all the medical schools. So now if you look, like for instance, in Atlanta right now, you have something called Spelman College. You know who Spelman is, right? That's John D. Rockefeller's wife. Her last name is Spelman. Her last name is Spelman.
That's the man's wife?
That's his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Look,
ain't a Spelman down south?
Man, Google it right now. Google who spell. Who,
go look this up real quick.
I never knew Spelman College named after.
Check this out.
That's crazy. I never knew that until I saw this video.
Ooh.
1894, name changes to Spelman Seminary in honor of Miss Laura Spelman.
Let's not talk about Morehouse. Let's not talk about look all these medical colleges. Go look. You think it goes back to somebody that's black? They don't. All these medical colleges go back to subsidiary and basically names or middle names or third grand. These are named that all these different medical colleges is named after John D. Rockefeller family. And you can trace them back. Just like you can trace back all the presidents to come from one entity, come from one bloodline, you can do the same thing with every medical college. Now, within the last 20 years, there's a bunch of new medical colleges that came up outside of that, which still follow the curriculum, but don't have their name. But when you start studying these names, man, they go back to John D. Rockefeller family, man. They go back to his family names. He owned these schools. That's why if you go and you teach against them, you can get locked up and persecuted because he sits at the head of the federal directors in the federal Supreme Court. John D. Rockefeller, man, he controlled the damn world, man. Him and the Carnegies, man. So look, let me show you how they did this though. So they get that. So now they start passing laws. These are people that's not into politics. These are people that don't have no doctrines in medicines, but they have enough money to influence. Because now you got enough money, you can put people in office. You can put certain governments in office. You can create the FBI. Guess who funded the creation of the FBI? Rockefeller did. He funded that. That's why it's an agency. He funded that agency. The FBI would not be the FBI without the Rockefeller Foundation family. He funded it. So what he did was he said, look, we're finna put money into the government system. We're going to put money into the school system. Let's create something called the School Education Board. I think it was in 1911. He created the Educational School Board. So everything that you learn from kindergarten all the way into college is actually the Flexner Report. Flexner, Carnegie, and the Rockefeller family came together with a bunch of scientists and a bunch of psychologists, and they said, we're going to create education. So whenever you learn anything in a public school system, you are being taught. You sitting on John D. Rockefeller lap. You acting like he your grandpa, and he giving you game on how he wants you to be ran. Now, check this out. This is his famous quote. He said, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of what? Workers. So you go to school to become a worker. Who you working for? The pharmaceutical companies. And so look, now remember, they broke up his companies, right? When they did the antitrust law against him to make him come work for them. And it worked because he started funding them and putting them in office and stuff. Shell's company, guess who owned it? Rockefeller. You know what I'm saying? Procter and Gamble. Guess who owned that? Rockefeller. You know what Procter and Gamble sells? They sells your tomatoes. They sells all your food. They sells all your food. Most of your cereal companies like Fruit Loop and them. Guess who's the back owner of them? Rockefeller. But you see, cereals is one of the number one cancer causing agents to children. You know what I'm saying? The milk and farm industry. Guess who owned the most land in America? The Rockefeller and the Carnegie Foundation. All the foods we eating owned by them. What about your toothpaste that got fluoride in it? Guess who owned most of your toothpaste? Rockefeller. What about the soaps and the shampoos you put in your body that causes you all these types of cancer? Guess who owned it? Rockefeller. Let's talk about the perms. The perms, which causes brain cancer. Guess who owned these things? These are all back. Well, let me not say owned, but when you dig and you find who funded these companies, guess who funded all these companies? The Rockefeller Carnegie Foundation. So they had so much money and they gave away charity to so many different people, but it was all for the purpose to actually create the educational school board and to penetrate the colleges. That way you went to school to teach pharmacology, and that way when a doctor see a symptom, he don't teach you how to heal. He teach you how to suppress that symptom, and he always have to give you what? A prescription to a medicine. And this medicine, they get a percentage off of everything they sell.
You know what I found wild, man, is that they don't teach doctors about nutrition.
Because it's being
I understand why, but I'm just saying.
Because you realize doctor just means teacher. That's all it means. So you can have a doctorate in anything. You can be a philosopher and be called doctor because you're a teacher of philosophy. So they're a teacher of pharmaceutical drugs. They're here to prescribe you a drug. And every time that they prescribe you a drug, the money go back to the Carnegie and the Rockefeller and the JP Morgan Bank Foundation, because bankers is who created the pharmaceutical industry.
Part of that too.
Rockefeller and the General Education Board encouraged vocational education during the years of 1880 to 1925. So that fits what you're
See?
saying.
They didn't only create the educational school board, they created the medical board, they created and revamped all of your colleges. So if you go to any school in America and in Germany, you are learning the mindset of John D. Rockefeller and how to serve his family forever. John D. Rockefeller and his family, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the DuPonts, all of these different people, the Kissingers, these are all the bloodline. These are same people. They just changed their names. They're actually from German, and then they converted over to Judaism. So they tell you that they're the Jews, but they really are Germans, and they are soul capturers. Until you get out the matrix, you're going to be serving them for lifetimes until you understand who these people are. And these people trace back into the Knights Templars, and they trace back into the Phoenician foundations all the way in Africa. These are ancient bloodlines of people, and to my knowledge, not to sound like spookism, they're not even humanoids. And this is the truth, man. These people were born into power, man. That's a facts. So
yeah, I believe that too. I believe, people like the Bush family, the British royal family, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers. These are some powerful bloodlines, and I don't think they're human. They're not even human. I believe they're reptilians or something, but that's another topic for another day. So yeah, let's move on. So the bulk of modern foods we've developed an emotional connection to have addiction engineered into the ingredients. We're in this toxic relationship with processed foods and drugs. The cost of healthcare has been rising directly in correlation with disease. So let's get into part two, the cause of disease, toxic overload. If prevention can be accomplished, then cures will not be needed, right? If prevention can be accomplished, right, then cures will not be needed. That's why we have to take the time to focus on our own well-being and focus on our own health right now, so we won't have to be suffering the consequences later on in life. So if it's not a whole food, it's a toxin. Anything we eat that cannot be metabolized, absorbed, assimilated, and its remaining byproducts eliminated from the system becomes a toxin. Modern processed foods devoid of fiber and contain toxic chemicals that accumulate in your colon as rotting, fermenting feces. The toxins produce byproducts that leach out into the bloodstream and wreak havoc on your blood vessels, tissues, and organs. So most of the foods that we eat, the processed foods, the junk food, so-called junk food, if you want to consider it food at all, these things contain harmful chemicals and harmful uh, byproducts within them that can cause, a whole lot of things to happen within the body. It could cause the blood to be vicious and toxic, and then it leaches out into different organs and all these different things. So if it's not a whole food, if it's not considered a whole food, it's definitely a toxin for sure. Now, this is when the toxins accumulate, right? If you're not, doing the necessary things to, eating clean foods and fasting or do whatever you have to do to cleanse the body, this is when the toxins start to accumulate from these acidic forming foods. Our health is vitally connected to our ability to eliminate waste from our bodies. Even if we consume the healthiest foods in the world, chronic constipation will cause those foods to rot and become toxic. Once the body reaches its toxic threshold, disease will most likely appear. This will lead to the first initial signs of disease, which is inflammation, right? The inflammation is directly correlated to an inflammatory and toxic diet. This unchecked toxicity will eventually destroy the tissue beyond repair, right? So we could have, it could start out as inflammation in the knees, inflammation in the joints, inflammation in the muscles, and then once these toxins start to accumulate, then over time it will manifest as disease or dis-ease. So when food isn't properly digested, it becomes toxic and begins seeping into the bloodstream, poisoning the body along with the bacteria and other pathogens it creates. Once in the bloodstream, these toxins travel to tissues, vital organs, and joints to manifest themselves as disease. The body will attempt to eliminate them by forming a mucus via the scalp. This is when dandruff, it manifests as dandruff in the head and throat. It becomes a cold in the lungs. It becomes an upper or lower respiratory tract infection. In the eyes, it becomes glaucoma. In the pancreas, it becomes diabetes, and so on and so forth. So depending on where these toxins accumulate, that's when it'll, become things such as, diabetes, glaucoma, uh, different respiratory issues and things of this sort, dandruff in the head. So wherever the toxins accumulate in specific regions and areas of the body, that's when these diseases start to form. Man, these food labels are getting ridiculous, man. I tell you. So I'm gonna ask y'all this: next time you all go to the grocery store, the supermarket, when you pick up a bag or a loaf of bread, or like this example, fruit roll-ups, start to pay attention to the labels that's printed on these certain food items. So next time I'm gonna ask you all this: next time you go to a supermarket, next time you go to the store, pay attention to the food labels. Actually read the ingredients on the food labels. I would say if it's more than five ingredients, it's a toxin, right? Because most of these ingredients that you read on these food labels, you can't even pronounce them. You had to be a chemist or some type of scientist to even read these uh ingredients, to read the ingredients within the food label. So the vast majority of grocery stores are filled with endless aisles of shelf items with expiration dates that will outlive some of their producers. Right? You have all these chemicals. That's why they implement all these chemicals to keep the shelf life going. Right? It's a process to get these food items from these different countries over into the warehouses, and then they have to ship these items from the warehouses. Sometimes they go from across the country into other warehouses within the destination that they're trying to get to. Then they put them onto the shelf. So it's a huge process. So they have to implement these chemicals and things of this nature to keep these products on the shelf longer. We rarely stop to think how these boxed, bagged, canned, and jarred items remain fresh for so long. The food industry goes to great lengths to ensure that processed foods maintain their color, texture, taste, and especially shelf life. This is how a food product that should contain only two or three ingredients ends up with a laundry list of chemical names you can barely pronounce. So look at this, the fruit roll-ups. I remember eating these as a kid. I'm pretty sure you have as well. You probably still eat them now. I haven't had fruit roll-ups in a minute, but just look at the ingredients within the fruit roll-ups. You have artificial dyes. You have artificial dyes in some of these cereals that we eat. Kids are eating these cereals. That's why kids end up getting sick. That's why kids are developing these certain conditions and ailments because of these dyes, these artificial dyes, right? These are toxins. High fructose corn syrup and all these different things, all these acidic ingredients, right? That are being put into the food that we eat. So we have to, pay attention to, you know, pay attention to the ingredients that's being implemented in the food that we eat. So, like I said, next time you go to the grocery store, just look at the bags, look at the box. Your favorite candy, your favorite chips that you always get within the store. Look at the ingredient labels and see how many 20, 10, 15, 20 plus ingredients that are on that box, that are on that label. Our foods are banned in other countries. Wake up, America, your food is banned in 30 countries, right? Many of the food and chemicals produced in America are not available outside the US because the ingredients are considered toxic in other nations. Many of these products are banned in most developed nations because they contain chemicals that have been deemed detrimental to their citizens' health. For example, we have this, fluoride in the water, right? In America, we have, fluoride in our tap water, fluoride in our drinking water, that contain harmful chemicals, right? Fluoride has been used in massive amounts in the form of tap water and dental products. 67% of the US water supply is fluoridated, while in comparison, 98% of Europe has banned water fluoridation, right? So that's why it's important for us to, it's I know it seems detrimental. I know it seems bad that, like, you're probably saying to yourself, man, what can I consume? What can I eat? What can I drink? No, it's I would say as long as you are, on that path, on that direction towards, eating as clean as possible, drinking as clean as possible. Because I'm going to be, showing some examples of some of the stuff that I use, some of the water that I drink, some of the foods that I eat and things like that, hygiene products that I use. So I'm not going to leave you guys empty-handed. I'm going to help you guys out. So stick to the end of the PowerPoint, stick to the end of the presentation. But yeah, the foods that we eat, even the water, they're attacking the water, the food, the hygiene products, all these different things. And most of this stuff is banned in other countries because they know how toxic and uh, inflammatory these things are to our health. Right? So let's get into part 3, which is the protein myth. So we are always, when it comes to health and nutrition, protein is definitely one of those things that's being talked about a lot, right? How much protein am I getting? What certain foods am I supposed to consume in order to get the right amount of protein, right? No one can dispute the supreme importance of protein in all of life. However, the belief that because our muscles are made of proteins, we're required to eat massive amounts of animal protein to maintain and build muscle is a total myth. And I'm going to be explaining why this is a total myth. So when did the words meat, muscle, and protein become synonymous? And is animal protein really the best source of protein we can have? In 1838, the Dutch chemist Gerardus Mulder first discovered the chemical structure of proteins. The word protein itself comes from the Greek word proteis, meaning of prime importance. It was discovered that the muscles, skin, and organs are primarily made of proteins. Proteins are made of varying combinations of 20 amino acids, right? Of which 8 are called essential because they must come from the food you eat, not for children specifically. The other 12 can be made by your body. The 20 amino acids are combined in several thousand chemical permutations that alter the functionality of the protein. So when we think of the protein, when we think of, consuming a certain amount of protein, it's not that we are consuming protein in itself because protein comes from the building blocks of amino acids, right? 20 to be specific, 20 amino acids. 8 are called essential because they come from the food that you eat. The other 12 are made from the body. So we need to look at protein in a totally different way. Proteins are the building blocks of amino acids. There is a much higher energy requirement for digestive elimination of protein than any other macronutrients. Fruits can be processed in 20 minutes on an empty stomach, vegetables in 60 minutes, and whole grains and legumes can take up to 2 hours. Animal protein, on the other hand, takes a minimum of 5 hours to process if it's a suitable portion size on an empty stomach, not in combination with other foods. Right. So when we're consuming, red meat, all these different types of meat, red meat, chicken, all these different things, all these heavy acidic foods, especially if we're eating it in combination with other foods and we're consuming it in large portions, it could take a toll on our digestive health. It could take a toll on our digestive system as a whole. That's why when we're constantly, especially when we're eating 3 meals a day, constantly consuming all these different types of meat and meat produce, bacon, pork, and all these different things, most of the time it can become undigested. It can be undigested in the body. It can, turn into rotting feces. And that's when toxins start to release within the body and all these different things. When meat is eaten with other complex macronutrients, the digestive time in the stomach will significantly increase due to the stomach attempting to metabolize proteins, fats, and carbohydrates simultaneously with both acidic and alkaline digestive juices, which will eventually neutralize themselves. This undigested food will then be passed on into the small intestines, unfit for assimilation and utilization, and as a result will begin to rot and ferment, releasing methane gas and other toxins into the body and creating disease instead of providing the intended nourishment for health. Right? When we're eating meat, when we're eating different types of meat, right, this is dead flesh. We have to realize that we are eating dead flesh. This is not living food. When we eat living food, such as fruits, berries, vegetables, these are, especially if they're in their raw form, these types of foods contain life force energy, right? This is like within the first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. So when we're transferring those nutrients and that energy from those live foods to us, right? We benefit from that, right? This is what we're supposed to be eating. We're not supposed to be eating meat. We're not supposed to be eating chicken and things of this nature because this is dead flesh. This is dead energy. Not to mention hormones, antibiotics, and genetically modified organisms are fed to the livestock, which ends up in all animal and dairy products we feed our family. These animals are often ridden with disease because of the poor living conditions, and these diseases will also end up on your plate. All right. So let's go into the impact of the livestock industry on the world, right? So the livestocking of animals in animal agriculture has become the leading causes of deforestation, pollution, rainforest destruction, greenhouse gases, species extinction, and water consumption, not fossil fuels and carbon dioxide that we tend to believe. According to the World Watch Institute, livestock in their byproducts account for at least 51% of all worldwide greenhouse gas emissions. Methane, aka cow farts, cow farts, has a global warming potential 86 times that of carbon dioxide and is up to 100 times more destructive in a 20-year time frame. These emissions are projected to increase by 80% by the year 2050 to keep up with our demand for animal protein and our growing population. So 50% of the land in America resides within the livestock, right? Resides within the livestock industry. So they have to keep all this up in order to meet our demands when it comes to animal protein and, in our growing population. That's why I believe, I'm gonna get into this in a minute, but there's a population control agenda being being played out here, right? With the, you know, with certain things like lab grown meat, with biotechnology, food being made on computers and labs and things like this. This may, they say this implementation of biotechnology and food creation within labs can eliminate deforestation, but this also creates another problem within itself. So we may tend to think that carbon dioxide, uh, all these different greenhouse gas emissions and all these different things. These are the causes of our uh, problems within our atmosphere. But in actuality, it's the livestock, it's the mistreatment of animals, giving these animals antibiotics and all these different things, uh, you know, damaging the soil, and all these different things. These things are been playing a big part in how we have certain all these toxins that are being accumulated within our atmosphere. So if we completely cut out fossil fuels and convert it to renewable, sustainable options, we still will succeed our carbon dioxide limit by the year 2030. These animals and grains grown to feed them occupy 45% of the Earth's total land. And in the US, half of the land is used for animal agriculture. Overgrazing has also desertified a third of the planet and destroyed 91% of the Amazon. Every second, up to 2 acres of rainforest are destroyed, and 137 plant, animal, and insect species are lost daily. Right, certain animals within the animal kingdom are becoming extinct because of deforestation, because of the livestock industry. Right, plants too, all of wildlife, all of nature. This is all attributed to the livestocking of animals. And now you got folks like Bill Gates implementing lab grown meat into our country to stop deforestation. But like I said, this creates a problem within itself. We're not even eating real food anymore. We probably haven't been eating real food for a while now. So, this you got individuals like Bill Gates. I believe he's a reptilian as well. He's not even a humanoid either. It's like certain people that you know, if I was watching a video on Bill Gates or if I was reading something in regards to a certain individual or certain bloodlines and things like that, just it doesn't sit well with me. And I trust my intuition. I trust my gut. These I don't believe these folks are not even human. They're not here for the betterment of humanity. They're not here for the betterment of society and people in general. They just here for a purpose. They're here for a specific whatever they're trying to accomplish. You know, it just doesn't sit well with me with these types of people. But yeah, with this lab grown meat, it's just gonna create another problem within itself. So the meat that we're eating is not even it's not even real meat. It's not even real meat no more. Like I don't even think we do we even have you know all these different animals to feed 8 billion people in this world? Do we have all these all these different cows and chickens and pigs and all that? Like, are they able to even compensate for the amount of people that exist within this world, that exist within this planet? We it's time for us to wake up, man. We're not even eating real meat no more. We probably eating human, probably eating people. It's that bad. And then most of the food that we're eating is not even real. So it's getting to that point. It's really getting to that point. That's why we have to educate ourselves on this subject and bring forth awareness onto topics like this, especially the food industry, because we love to eat, including me. I ain't gonna lie, I love to eat. I love to eat as much as the next guy, but we really have to pay attention to the types of foods that we're eating. You know, Grow your own food if you can. Right? If you have the resources, if you have the money, grow your own food if you can. If not, just try your best, try your hardest to just eat clean as possible. Go to your nearest farmers market because most of the food in the farmers market is being tampered with. But as long as you are striving and as long as you are working hard towards taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, and things like this, that's all that matters at the end of the day. So, because of these conditions, most Western societies are constipated, overfed, and malnourished. So, paleobiologists primarily use the teeth and jaws from fossils to determine their diet. Sharp serrated teeth and strong jaw structures are indicative of carnivores to tear into flesh and bite chunks out of meat. Right. So we're going to get into the anatomy of carnivores and herbivores. Right. Not to say that we are herbivores in entirety, but we resemble uh different herbivores. We come closest to the animals that are herbivores and not carnivores. Right. But I can't speak for all people. We all of us we don't eat the same type of foods because we're biologically different. We're physiologically, biologically different. As black people, versus Caucasian people, Asian people, Indian people. We're biologically different. That's just a fact. So we can't be eating the same foods. Black people, African people, we can't be eating the same foods as Asian people or Indian people or Hispanic people. Our bodies are different. Especially us within the conscious community. Especially us within the conscious community, we have to be paying attention to these type of things. So the jaw of a carnivore is typically strong enough to break bones. Herbivores have flat, dull, rounded teeth like ours that are exceptional for chewing and grinding plant foods. A plant eater's saliva is alkaline. That's why our saliva is alkaline. A carnivore's saliva is acidic in nature, which is required to break down animal protein. So they're built to break down animal carcass and meat, all these different things. Their saliva is acidic, ours is not. The elimination canal or colon of carnivores is short and its walls are smooth. The colon for herbivores and humans is long with sac-like pouches, which make it conducive or conductive for prolonged nutrient absorption. That's why when we're eating flesh, when we're eating different types of meat, it stays in the body longer versus when we're eating fruits and vegetables and berries and things of this nature. So that's why certain meat that we eat stay in the body and become rotting feces, and it goes undigested. That's why it rots in the body. That causes diseases and toxins to be released in the body. The meat you eat doesn't even eat meat. Ever thought about that? In general, people eat pigs, chickens, and fish to get the protein they need from muscle. But don't you find that odd that all these animals eat a plant-based diet, like the cows, uh, chickens? They don't even eat meat. The meat that you eat don't even eat meat, right? And yet they all have muscle. What do gorillas, elephants, and rhinos eat? They all eat a plant-based diet and are some of the largest and strongest animals on the planet. So for all the people who say, you can't compare us to animals, we're not biologically the same as animals, it's you can't compare a human to an animal. Well, our human DNA is 99% compatible with the chimpanzees. This is why they are often tragically used in clinical trials and studies to observe possible responses to drugs, chemicals, and other stimuli to predict correlated biological response in humans. So I'm not saying here that I believe in the evolution theory, or the evolution theory Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. I'm not here saying that I believe in that, but when you actually study, the DNA between the chimpanzee versus us, we are 99% compatible with the chimpanzee. So that's why I'm making this comparison between us and the chimpanzee and certain herbivores, right? Their primate cousins, mountain gorillas, can grow to 6 feet tall and weigh up to 500 pounds. According to SeaWorld, their diet consists of 86% leaves, shoots and stems, 7% roots, 3% flowers, 2% snails, ants, and grubs. Right? So these are some of the biggest animals in the world. The gorilla, the mountain gorilla, the elephants, rhinos, elephants. These are huge. These are humongous animals that can weigh up to tons. But they don't eat meat though. They don't eat any type of meat. They're not carnivores. They're herbivores. They eat plants. They eat fruits. They eat berries. Right. So you have different individuals. We tend to think that certain vegans, all vegans are skinny or all vegans are slim. Right. So we have this misconception that if we're not eating animal protein, uh, we can't gain muscle. But that's false. Right. You can gain muscle by being on a plant-based diet. Right? It just depends on, how much, taking into consideration how much food you are eating, you know, the portions, the type of portions that you are eating, what time of day you are eating, what type of exercising that you are implementing to your workout regimen, things of this sort. So you can build muscle, you can build a certain type of physique by being on a plant-based diet, right? You just have to do your own research and, you know, uh, you know, uh, watch certain people, like I said, take into consideration how much food you're consuming and things this sort. This proves that the idea of animal protein consumption being equivalent to muscle growth is ridiculous. So this is a video by the great Dick Gregory. He touches on like I said, the examples of the gorilla, the biggest animals, one of the biggest animals in the world, and they don't eat meat for protein. So it's kind of funny too. So let's check this out.
And we call it, meat. No, it's called flesh. Meat is called the meat of the apple, the meat of the orange. See how they switch words on you? The meat of the nut, And the three strongest animals in the jungle, the gorilla, the elephant, and the rhinoceros, they ain't never ate nothing but fruit and berries. My problem was that once you do something that dramatic, all my black friends, they became scientists. How come you don't eat no meat? What do you do for protein?
Bad.
Well, when you love people, you can explain things to them and it gets through. I say, well, the three strongest animals in the jungle, the gorilla, the elephant, the rhinoceros, well, they don't eat no meat. Matter of fact, the meat you eat don't eat meat.
Yeah, man, I could definitely relate to that. Ever since I became vegan, I have, family members, other people around me, other people in my circle, they ask, like, what do you eat for protein? If you don't eat meat, if you're not eating chicken, what you eating for protein? How you getting your protein? So you can definitely get your protein from plants. You can definitely get your protein from different types of plants and things of this nature. You can get your protein by being on a plant-based diet for sure. We as the original people were plant eaters, right? Just like it says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29 from the King James Version of the Bible. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree, yielding seed. To you it shall be for me. right? So like I said earlier, I can't speak for all, races of people. It's just a fact, man. We're biologically different, right? And we as the original people, as Africans, black people, melanated beings, whatever you want to call it, we were plant eaters. We weren't eating meat, right? You can go as far back to, before slavery. Before slavery, we weren't even eating meat. We were vegans, we were vegetarians. Meat was introduced to us through slavery, right? With pork, uh, all these, bottom feeder type food. This type of food was introduced to us through slavery, right? We weren't. That's why they have this negative stereotype, this negative connotation when it comes to us and chicken and things like that. And we weren't even eating chicken. We weren't even eating flesh. We weren't eating dead flesh, right? So we as the original people, we were plant eaters, right? God provided the fruits, God provided the plants, God provided the vegetables for us to eat on this planet, right? So this is a diagram of, some varieties of vegan protein, some meat substitutes. You got avocado, broccoli, almonds, spinach, asparagus, mushrooms. So these are some vegan proteins that you can substitute for your meat cravings. If you're interested in becoming, uh, a plant going towards a plant-based diet. These are some great substitutes for meat, right? So you might not like everything that's on this diagram, but pick and choose which items you might want and implement them into your diet. So next part, dish the dairy. We're going to the subject of dairy and how dairy is uh you know plays a negative part in one's health. So the USDA spent 550 million to convince the American public that milk does a body good. This is no doubt due to the barrage of commercials we grew up watching, like Got Milk, right? You remember those Got Milk commercials? And decades of advocacy for dairy in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, food pyramids. Nutritionists and healthcare professionals formulated these suggestions by counseling every patient on the importance of dairy, providing both calcium and vitamin D to grow strong bones. Now, I remember as a kid, my dad would always tell me, you know, drink your milk, drink your cow's milk. It's good for your bones. Has a good source of calcium. It's good for your bones. It's good, provides vitamin D and all these sorts of different things. But we have been so misinformed and miseducated, not only not only on dairy, but just food as a whole. And since when was cow's milk or any other type of animal's milk fit for human consumption? That's why we always gotta, think about these things, man. Like cow's milk. Why are we consuming cow's milk and not consuming our own mother's milk? Right? Why cow's milk? Why are we consuming cow's milk? And the cow is not even compatible with the human body at all. These are some of the questions that you got to be asking yourself, man. So we got milk, these, athletes, celebrities promoting milk, with the milk mustache. Uh, you know, that's why most celebrities they got to use the celebrities because celebrities are powerful. The celebrities got the influence, so they got to use certain celebrities and public figures to promote their agenda, right? And then on the right you see the original. This is the original USDA food guide pyramid. Right? You see the source at the bottom is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So you see at the bottom, you got bread, cereal, rice, pasta. You got 6 to 11 servings, right? Then you got vegetables, fruits, milk, yogurt. poultry, fish, nuts, meat, uh, sweets, all these different sweets. So this was the original USDA food pyramid, right? It has been changed all throughout the years, but I was able to find this is the original USDA food guide pyramid. Now you see all these, different types of foods, these uh, sweets, bread, pasta. They really programmed into us this type of information, right? And then we tend to believe that we have to, these foods are good for us, these foods are healthy for us, when in its essence they're not, right? They tell us to eat 3 meals a day. Imagine eating three meals a day consistently every day, 7 days a week, especially these types of foods right here. So it's an agenda going on with food now. It's been like this for years now. So one of the most common food allergies is dairy, which is dairy. Dairy is one of the most common food allergies. Dairy creates an immune reaction that leads to inflammation and mucus production. This immune response leads to ear infections, respiratory issues, post-nasal drip. Uh, Not sure how you pronounce that word. I'm pretty sure you guys can read that. Nasal congestion, rashes, hives, eczema, and digestive problems. Right, that's why most people are, you hear a person say they're lactose intolerant. That's why a lot of people are lactose intolerant, because milk and cheese and dairy, all these different dairy products are not suitable for human consumption. So dairy is cleverly hidden in baked goods, candy, even candy, pizza crust, and medications. 75% of the world's population has some form of reaction to dairy, and that says a lot. Dairy is not meant for human consumption. Why you should avoid cheese? Why you should avoid cheese? Cheese has a devastating impact on our overall health as a country. It is the perfect recipe for heart disease. It's the number one source of saturated fat in the American diet. Cheese has the cholesterol equivalent of a steak, and cheese is one of the leading sources of sodium of all foods. Now, I believe that cheese is probably one, if not the number one uh, food item that's addictive, that we can't seem to get rid of, that we can't seem to take out of our diet as a whole. We always, adding cheese to we add cheese to our salad, we add cheese to our crackers, we add cheese to our sandwiches. Cheese is a very addictive drug, if I do say so myself. I can attest to that as well. But cheese cheese is not, you know not right for the human body. We should be eliminating cheese altogether. And I will be of course I will be listing some alternatives or substitutes to cheese, but cheese is definitely a toxin that should be eliminated from our diet. So I got y'all. These are plant-based cheese replacements. So you got cashew-based, pine nut-based, almonds, and nutritional yeast sparingly. So this is how to get calcium from plant-based foods, right? You got kale, Swiss chard, spinach, collard greens, mustard greens, sesame seeds, and as well as fruits. All right, so you can get calcium. You can get calcium from plant-based foods. You can get calcium from fruits, different leafy greens, vegetables, and all these different things. So you don't have to get calcium just from milk, right? If you choose to drink milk, I would recommend almond milk, coconut milk, things of this sort, not cow's milk. We shouldn't even be thinking about drinking cow's milk anymore. You know. So let's get into the next part, which is sugar, the bitter truth about sugar, right? This sugar, sugar is definitely a drug, right? We think of, uh, think of cocaine or uh, alcohol, meth, all these different things as drugs. Sugar is the number one drug in America, right? Right. I would say even in the world, sugar is the number one drug in the world. The sugar creates a, a psychological effect on the brain. It manipulates dopamine receptors within the brain. It creates a physiological effect on the body. Sugar does a great deal. Sugar has a great effect on the body and the mind. So sugar feeds cancer cells and stimulates tumor growth. Cancer cells have 10 times more insulin receptors than normal cells. Dr. David Dr. David Jocks. So let's get into this sugar addiction. Let's get into this drug right now. Like I said, sugar is a drug, right? It produces a physiological and psychological effect on the body. Sugar is directly related to obesity, heart disease, cancer, lowered immunity, metabolic syndrome, and tooth decay. Food companies have cleverly hidden sugar in many foods we eat to feed our addiction. And I'm going to be going into those uh, later on this in the presentation. Sugar leads to spikes in blood sugar and insulin, right? Sugar makes the blood viscous, which causes vessel and organ damage, and chronic fatigue. Excess sugars in the blood overburden the pancreas and eventually leads to the development of diabetes. So it can have effect on different organs in the body, the blood, your teeth. That's why the dental industry is making a whole bunch of money off of us. It's a cycle. It's a never ending cycle. Right? We eat all these toxic foods that contain all this sugar, artificial sugar, and then we have problems within our teeth. It's the bacteria and all these different things, can especially wreak havoc in the mouth. Right. That's the number one thing the bacteria thrives off is our mouth. Right. And we have, sugar, it messes with our teeth, and we got to get our teeth done, and we got to spend a whole bunch of money on dental bills, medical bills, and all these other different things. Our sugar addiction. Humans did not develop an obsession for the taste of white sugar until American continents established the sugar industry via slave trade in the Caribbean. In 1537, the first sugar refinery was established in Germany, primarily for sugar cane. Up until the middle of the 18th century, sugar was considered a luxury and was referred to as the white gold. By the 1700s, the average person consumed 4 pounds of sugar annually. By the 1800s, about 18 pounds, and then in the 1900s, it spiked to 90 pounds. By the year 2009, Americans were gorging themselves on 170 pounds of sugar annually. That's nearly a half pound of sugar daily. So as time went on, as the years went on, our sugar consumption started rising. Our sugar consumption started increasing. High fructose corn syrup, right? You definitely see, high fructose corn syrup in a lot of items, a lot of goods that you see within the supermarkets a lot of the goods that are in these supermarkets today. In 1970, due to the political climate and trade restrictions in cane sugar producing countries, high fructose corn syrup was introduced to the U.S. food system. It was invented by Japanese scientist Yoshiyuki Takasaki in 1966. In an attempt to win political points with voters, Richard Nixon instructed his Secretary of Agriculture to come up with ways to make food cheaper. High fructose corn syrup made its way into the American food supply because it was cheaper and sweeter than table sugar. Right? You always got to find an alternative. You always got to find ways to make things cheaper and easier to produce. Then in the 1980s, in response to the fat-free fad pushed by the American Heart Association and USDA, it was added to virtually every processed good. Right? You see the dangers of high fructose corn syrup. Right? You have the risk of Alzheimer's and memory loss, weight gain, obesity, type 2 diabetes, bad cholesterol, high blood pressure, aging, damage to the immune system, and so on and so forth. Right. So high fructose corn syrup definitely is a toxin that needs to be avoided. Definitely a toxin that needs to be eliminated from our diet. High fructose corn syrup is extracted from dent corn, which is not edible unless it goes through a refining process. This industrial food product is far from natural. The process is so secret that Cargill and Archer Daniels Midland refuses to allow investigative reporters to review the process. Now, that's saying a lot. That's how you know this is definitely not fit for human consumption if they're not allowed to witness the process behind the refinery of high fructose corn syrup. What is important for you to know is the fructose in high fructose corn syrup is nothing like glucose, the sugar your body uses for energy. So there's a difference between glucose and fructose. Glucose is the actual sugars that are being produced from the body. It can also be found in fruits, right? Fructose, uh, I'm sorry, glucose, it can't be compared to the fructose in fruits. So glucose is the actual sugar that is produced within the body, right? So there's a difference between glucose and fructose. Glucose is the sugar that's produced within the body, right? And fructose is unnatural sugar, right? That can't be produced from the body. Glucose is natural sugar, and fructose is artificial sugar, right? So high fructose corn syrup is nothing like glucose, the sugar your body uses for energy. It can't be compared to the fructose in fruits. No form of added sugar can be compared to sugars in whole foods, right? Whether added sugar is extracted from cane or beets or created in the lab like high fructose corn syrup, it always requires chemical processing. So the sugars you see like in these different types of sodas, Cokes, Dr. Pepper, Sprite, uh, root beer, Mountain Dew, all these different sodas. The sugars in soft drinks have been replaced with the synthetic neurotoxin aspartame, or how you pronounce it. This poison is concealed behind the promotion of 0 calories. However, it's 180 times sweeter than natural sugar. So we're thinking that, if we're drinking Coca-Cola Zero, we can have our cake and eat it too, right? But that's not the case at all. Diet Coke, these items, these products, they contain more sugar than the regular product in itself. So these are the different names for sugars, the different aliases for sugar that you might see on the ingredient labels on food products. Uh, Sugar, glucose, uh, cane juice, brown sugar, uh, fructose, rice syrup, all these different names. These are basically just different names for sugar, right? So uh it's hidden in plain sight. They hide these, you know, it all means the same thing basically, right? It's just they just have different names for it. So we need to, pay attention to the type of all these different types of sugars, soy, and all these different things. They can have an effect on our consciousness, right? It's a war on our consciousness, and they use the food to uh to have a psychological effect on our pineal gland because it has an effect on our pineal gland. It has an effect on our chakras and in the alignment of our chakras, right? So there's definitely a war on our consciousness when it comes to the type of foods that we eat. How the holidays spread the flu. So of course during the winter months is when people get sick the most. All right, this is most often attributed to the change in weather that begins in early October and lasts until April. Now this is when the vaccines come out. This is when they start promoting the vaccines. Get your flu shot, get your flu vaccine. This, that, and the third. This is around the time when we get sick the most, right? So Halloween. Got Halloween first. Halloween up first. Halloween generates $2 billion in sales every year with the purchasing of candy. Kids and adults consume on this candy for the next week or two. So during the time of Halloween, that's when we start buying all the candy. Getting our costumes, going trick or treating, and things like that. It's a ritual. When kids, adults, we go to houses, trick or treating, we're participating in a ritual, right? That's another video for another day. But we eating all this candy, kids eating all this candy, all this sugar, artificial sugar having an effect on our teeth, having an effect on our health, going to the dentist because we're eating all this candy, we're consuming all this candy for the next week or two, right? About 3 weeks later, Thanksgiving comes around. Everybody eating things such as turkey. You got the turkey, you got the ham, you got the cranberry sauce, you got the stuffing, you got the macaroni, the yams, and all these different types of foods that we consume. You know, you ever wonder why we start to feel sleepy, we start to feel lethargic, we start to feel tired after we eat all these foods? That's because all the blood is leaving our limbs. The blood is leaving our limbs and it's going into our stomach. It's going to our digestive system. That's why we feel all sleepy and lethargic because all that energy is being converted, all that energy is being maneuvered towards our digestive system, right?
But look at here. Look. I got beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, lamb, rams, hogs, dogs, chicken, turkeys, rabbits. You name it. You name it. When I was sick, he healed me. When I was put outdoors, he put a roof over my head. Haven't got anything to praise him for tonight.
When I was sick, he healed me. When I was down, he lifted me up. When I was broke, he blessed me financially. Oh. Yeah, that's definitely a classic video right there, man. That's definitely a classic right there. But yeah, man, you know the deal. Gather around during Thanksgiving, you know, praise Jesus. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord for the food that we about to receive right now on this dinner table that's killing us every single day, you know? But yeah, this is the process. We got Halloween, eating all the candy, Thanksgiving, eating all these toxic informative foods that we enjoy a lot, you know, Christmas arrives when you know, we basically eat the same foods during Christmas as well, but on top of that, we're drinking eggnog, right? Christmas arrives when we're basically eating the same thing except with the eggnog on top of that. Then we got New Year's. Then New Year comes where we consume alcohol on top of all the food we've been eating for the past 3 months. So we do this every single year, right? This is how the holidays help spread the flu. This is why we become sick during this time. This is why we catch things most often during this time. You know, and this leads to low immunity, right? That's why our immunity is so important. When we eat these foods, these foods are lowering our immunity, right? And this is how we become sick. This is how we easily get sick from eating these foods, not taking care of ourselves, not taking care of our health. Eating the wrong types of foods, consuming the wrong things, consuming the wrong information. Not doing enough research, things of this sort. The antidote to sugar is fiber, right? Fiber plays a crucial role in slowly releasing natural sugars from plant-based foods, which lowers the need for insulin and makes you feel full. So whole natural fruits are never an issue, especially if they are in season and are seeded, right? So we have to make sure that the fruits that we eat are seeded, right? I'm going to get into, the GMO foods, hybrid foods in a minute, but when we're eating these high sugary foods, it raises our insulin levels, right? That's why we feel that we have the need to eat more of it. That's why we never feel full or satiated or satisfied. When we're eating foods rich in fiber, high in fiber, that's when our insulin levels start to level out, right? It makes us feel full and we don't have to eat as much. So these are some great sources of soluble fiber. We got fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, peas. So I have a video on my channel, high vibrational foods versus low vibrational foods. I go in a little bit, deep in depth into the specific types of foods that you need to be eating. If you guys want to check that video out, I'll leave that video in the description box below. So now we got the seeds of deception. So this is the part where we get into the uh, hybrid foods and GMO foods. So this is the invention of hybrid foods. Hybrid foods are created by cross-pollinating two different species of plants. Right? In the mid-1930s, people began mass producing hybrid fruits and plants. These hybrid foods do not naturally occur and will not grow without human intervention and protection. Right? So they can't be grown by itself. It has to be it's man-made. It's manufactured by man. Most are seedless and will not reproduce in the second generation, have lower nutritional levels, are extremely imbalanced in vitamin and mineral ratios, and their resultant sugars are not recognized by the digestive system, liver, or pancreas. Today, more than 90% of the food available in supermarkets is hybrid in nature. Hybrid plants that pose as healthy but are hazardous, right? So you got things such as rice, white rice, brown rice. Rice increases concentrations of arsenic in the body by 44%. Arsenic is introduced into the grains via the use of pesticides and poultry fertilizer, right? So I would recommend, wild rice. Wild rice is a more healthier, better option as opposed to uh, white and brown rice. Then you got corn. Corn is one of the most hybridized plants in the world. It depletes the soil of vital minerals and microorganisms. Then you got garlic. Garlic is highly acidic with a pH of 3.3, almost equivalent to battery acid. Then you got carrots, right? We tend to think carrots, is that people say is good for our eyes, right? But carrots are starch based and contains a high concentration of beta carotene, an antioxidant designed to eliminate free radicals that lead to aging and cancer. The modern carrot is a hybrid between Queen Anne's lace and the wild yam. So now you got soy, right? You have a whole lot of products that contain, you either say soy, soybean oil, they have many different names for it. So soy is a starch that produces sulfide in the body. It depletes the body of both iron and oxygen. 94% of all soy made in America is genetically modified. So soy raises estrogen levels. Too much is bad, especially for males. The great George Washington Carver, the father of the peanut, was by profession a botanist and said that soybean isn't suitable for human consumption. So George Washington Carver, he was hired by Henry Ford to figure out how to best utilize soybean when it comes to different products, right? So he was able to create all these different things by using the soybean. So that's how you know that soy is not fit for human consumption, right? And like I said, 94% of all soy in America is genetically modified. So anything that contains, soy, different types of bread, different types of baked goods, cookies, all these different things, it contains some form of soy, right? And soy has a dramatic effect on the pineal gland. It has a dramatic effect on the pineal gland, our body, our genetic makeup. It's an attack. It's definitely an attack on our consciousness and our genetic makeup. Right? When we're eating these certain foods, we become, you know, unaligned with who we truly are. Right? It does damage to our DNA. It does damage to our genetic makeup. Right? So when we, take the time to do our fasting, when we take the time to cleanse ourselves from the inside out, then we start to become aligned with who we are in nature, and that's when we start to, uh, eliminate these things altogether. That's when we start to reprogram our taste buds. That's when we start to think about food in a totally different way. When we reprogram our mind and our taste buds, then the need for these sugary foods uh, become non-existent, right? When we consume these things, when we consume these products, that's when we start to, develop, parasites, having parasitic infections, parasites forming in the body. And these parasites, they they have the ability to warp and to manipulate our minds. That's why we have these sugar cravings. That's why we have all these cravings when it comes to certain foods and food items and food products, is because of these parasites that exist within our bodies. Damage to our soul and our soil in our food chain. So the way food is grown today has completely ruined the nutritional quality of much of our soil. Monocropping, ammonium nitrate fertilizers, chemical pesticides, and the influx of genetically modified foods have taken away our once fertile soils of nutrition, right? So, all these chemical processes, all these things that we are doing is hurting our soil, right? It's playing a negative effect on our soil. It has a negative effect. It has a negative downturn on our soil, right? Without rich soil, without the soil, you know, we're not able to, strive as a people. We're not able to grow, the foods that we need to produce without the soil. The soil contains many nutrients, vital nutrients that we need to, that we need for our world, that we need for our earth, that we need for Mother Earth. And without the soil, we can't do much. As demineralization continues to increase, disease rates rise in the same parallel fashion. When the soil is deficient, the plant is when the soil is deficient, the plant is deficient. And so insects attack and pesticides are used. Right. So, without the soil, without the vital essence of the soil, the plant can't thrive. And since the plant can't thrive, that's when insects start to come. That's when the use of pesticides had to be used to take care of the plants, take care of the soil, and what have you. So it's a vicious inorganic cycle that is at the forefront of our health disparity. So let's get into genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. Sip, sip. GMOs are created through a laboratory process in which genes are extracted from one species and through an artificial process. These genes are forced into a random position on the DNA sequence of an unrelated plant or animal. It's estimated that 70% of all processed foods today contain at least one GMO. The standard American diet, SAD diet, aka the SAD diet, which is sad, consists of roughly 69% of processed foods. So the majority of the tomatoes that you see in supermarkets and the supermarkets that we are buying our foods from are the result of extracting the gene from the Arctic flounder fish and inserting that gene into a tomato, which nature only allows to grow in the summer. So that's why you have these tomatoes and these different other different things like salmon. People are able to grow salmon, able to grow tomatoes and all these different items and food products in the winter because of the genetic splicing. Right? That's why you have certain fruits that you see in stores and they're able to grow these certain fruits and vegetables and things of this nature during the wintertime where they don't thrive in the wintertime. So now you have tomatoes that can be easily grown during the winter. These mutations result in the manifestation of disease, allergies, deformity, and many potentially harmful effects. Every single independent study conducted on the impact of genetically modified foods has concluded these transgenic foods damage organs. Let me start over. Every single independent study conducted on the impact of genetically modified foods has concluded these transgenic foods damage organs, lead to I can't even read right now, lead to infertility and immune system failure, and perforate the gastrointestinal tract. So now we got the FDA's relationship with food companies. During the first Bush administration, the White House instructed the leadership at FDA to create room for biotechnology food companies. In 1991, the attorney for Monsanto, Michael Taylor, was appointed the deputy commissioner for policy at the FDA. In 2010, Michael was named deputy commissioner for foods at the FDA by the Obama administration. Is that a red flag? Does that seem like a red flag? The first individual to hold this position. He was in charge of policy at the FDA when GMO policies were initiated and under the Obama administration, which made him king of all things food. This occurred while the overwhelming consensus among scientists at the FDA considered GMOs to be dangerous and would lead to allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional deficiencies. Unfortunately, all the research was met with backlash, and many of the scientists were fired and discredited. So when these higher ups, when these individuals who take, government roles, you know, individuals within Congress, individuals within legislation who are making these certain decisions, implementing millions and billions of dollars into these companies, into this technology, that definitely plays a crucial role in how we, how we receive our food, how food is being distributed, how food is being, made and manufactured. So these individuals and these conglomerates and these individuals and these people, they play a big part in, in the types of food that we're eating, right? So all the all the research, all the information that's trying to be, tested and combated, research and all these different things. All these things are being swept under the rug by the higher ups, by these higher powers, by these people within these conglomerates. From the first Bush administration up until the Obama administration, chemical companies that produce GMO foods have fought to suppress evidence, infiltrated our government agencies, and rewritten laws and policies regarding the food we eat that violate our constitutional rights. So these individuals, these people, they have the money and they have the power to do these things, to produce these GMO foods, to suppress information, to suppress evidence, to, the rewritten of laws and policies when it comes to the food that we eat. This is a violation of our constitutional rights. Certain, food labels that's not being required to be put on certain food items that we see in these stores. It's coming to a time where, we're coming to a time where all this is being revealed. All this type of information is being revealed to the public, right? It's up to us. It's up to the people to bring this type of information to the forefront, because you have different situations like this. You have different, people within government hiding this type of knowledge, hiding this type of information, keeping things a secret, which won't last very long. So this is how GMO foods are patented. Unlike plants, meat does not require FDA approval. These companies tell the FDA that GMO foods are no different than conventional or organic crops and require no special testing. Right? They have the power. They have the power to do this. In order to receive a patent, they've convinced the U.S. Patent Office that GM foods are unique and nothing like natural plants. So companies like Monsanto, Bayer, Syngenta, Dow, and DuPont. Now, mind you, all these are chemical companies that have a hand with with modifying their foods, right? These are all chemical companies that are now in the business of making genetically modified foods, right? So all these companies found a loophole to claim a copyright on their adaptation of nature's design. So they playing with nature, right? They trying to be nature. They're trying to be God. All these different people, these companies, they trying to play God. Congress sides with GMO producers. In 2015, the U.S. House of Representatives passed legislation by a vote of 275 to 150 in favor of HR. In 1599, a bill that bans states and local authorities from labeling or regulating genetically engineered foods. The bill prohibits the FDA from ever implementing GMO labeling. It's crazy, isn't it? It also allows food companies to make misleading claims, such as all natural for genetically engineered ingredients. Right? That's why you see, you might pick up a loaf of bread. It might say non-GMO, all natural. Doesn't contain this product, doesn't contain this chemical, and so on and so forth. It's all misleading. This goes against the rights of citizens, state, and local authority. American citizens deserve the same rights as the other 64 countries that require GMO labeling. That's why in many other countries, these different products and food groups and food items, different chemicals that are being used in the food are banned in other countries. So we deserve the same. We deserve the same treatment. We deserve the same respect. Right? They're treating us like guinea pigs in the lab. Right? We're human beings. At the end of the day, we're living beings. We should be treated as such. But unfortunately, that's not how these higher ups see us, right? It's a money game. It's a money scheme. They're doing this for their own agenda, for their own accord. So, can't emphasize this enough. You are what you eat, right? Eat to live, not to die, by the great Dr. Sabi. You are what you eat. The whole phrase, you are what you eat, is literally true. The food you eat becomes the body you are made of. If you treat your body with kindness and respect, you're going to be filled with kindness and respect. If you treat your body like shit, you're going to feel like shit, right? If you're, you know, not treating your body on accord, if you're not treating your body with the same respect, if you're just, unconsciously eating, if you're constantly eating all these foods that are not good for you, then you're going to feel like shit, basically. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel like some shit, right? So that's why it's important for us to, eat as healthy as possible, eat as clean as possible, and then your body will thank you for it at the end of the day, right? When you're taking care of your body's going to give you the same energy. Your body's going to give you the same respect in return because your cells are alive. Your cells are listening to you. Your cells are always speaking to you. Your cells are always listening to you. And when we're feeding our cells happy food, life force energy that you can get from whole foods, that you can get from live foods, your body will give you that same respect in return. Too many of us are only eating to satisfy our taste buds and not for the nourishment of our bodies. We're always eating for taste, but not for the nourishment of our bodies. Our taste buds have become hijacked. We rely so much on our taste buds, because only thing is our taste buds. The matrix is sending a signal to our brain telling us that this steak is juicy, that this steak is good, that this steak is tender, right? But you know, your taste buds are only sending signals to the brain, and your brain is interpreting these things, interpreting the taste of these foods, which is not even real. So it's time for us to become more of a conscious eater, right? Becoming a conscious eater is becoming aware of what we are eating on a daily basis. So you might say, or certain people might say, oh, I have cancer because it runs in my family, or I have this because it runs in my family, and so on and so forth. So if the same DNA is passed on to me from my grandparents and parents, containing the same genetic material as all my brothers, sisters, etc., why are these genes linked to disease choosing to express themselves in some, but not all my family members? We have to understand that genes do not self-activate. Genes don't change. Genes don't just change randomly. It is an environmentally directed mutation as a result of the internal environment created by the patient. Genes only cause 5% or less of all disease. Modern science has proven that 95% of cancer is the result of your rewriting normal genes into cancerous genes as a result of the internal environment you create through lifestyle choices. So when it comes to, cancer cells, this is based on your internal environment, right? Genes are able to turn on and off based on your environment, your internal environment, your outer environment, and things of this sort. So whatever you are feeding into your internal environment, mentally, physically, spiritually, all the above, this is what dictates what if you develop any sort of cancer cells or any type of cancerous environment as being inhabited in your internal being. What he/she ingests nutritionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually determines a patient's internal environment. Right. So whatever you consume spiritually, mentally, physically, nutritionally determines your internal environment. So a person who says, "Oh, I have cancer because it runs in my family," or "I have this and that because it's within my bloodline and this, that, and third," you know, that's not true, right? That's entirely not true. It all depends on your internal environment and how you uh treat yourself on a core within your internal environment. The energy of living foods. Live foods transfer their life force energy into you as a result of eating and metabolizing them. This is simply the first law of thermodynamics. I mentioned this earlier in the video. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, but simply transferred. So you see this diagram on the right. You have cooked cabbage versus live cabbage, right? When you're eating cooked cabbage, when you're cooking something, when you're cooking food, you are basically killing the vital nutrients within the food. You are killing the enzymes within the food, right? That's when it loses its nutritional value. But when you are eating live cabbage, when you're eating live raw foods, that energy that's being stored in that food is being transferred to you, right? Like I said, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. So that's why it's important for us to be eating live foods that contain energy within them. So the picture on the right shows cooked cabbage that's denatured through cooking versus uncooked cabbage. The light you see being emitted from the live cabbage are biophotons that transfer nutrition, intracellular consciousness, evolution, growth, and healing. Right. So this is how you reap the benefits of live foods. This is how you reap the benefits of live foods. We are electrical beings. Therefore, we need foods that are electric in order to function properly. Consuming processed foods is equivalent to putting diesel fuel into a regular car. Right? When we're feeding our bodies dead flesh, junk food, uh, high fructose corn syrup, all these different things. When we're feeding our bodies this, that's why we feel lethargic and sleepy and tired and we're becoming malnourished. Right? We're not eating the proper foods. We're not eating foods that are high in nutritional value. Right. So that's equivalent to putting diesel fuel in a regular car. Right. You're putting sugar in your gas tank. Right. You might feel satisfied, you may feel happy, you might feel energized, that temporary high, that temporary energy, but then it comes crashing down. All that energy starts to crash down. Food in the spirit. Right, let's get spiritual here. Our addiction to food can be traced back to an imbalance in one of our energy centers in the body called chakras, right? Overeating is often connected to the lowest energy center called the root chakra, right? The root chakra deals with our body, our health, food and survival and all these different things. Because of the deep connection to our physical body, it is also very much connected to our physical health. It's important for us to balance out our chakras by eating the right foods and showing love and appreciation to ourselves and our bodies, right? So overeating can be a sign of an imbalance in one of the chakras. So once we take the time to rebalance the chakras, to eat the necessary foods that we need to eat, that's when our chakras start to become aligned, and that's when we start to become whole beings. So there's profit in chronic illness, right? The sad truth is there is no money in curing diseases, but there's no money in dying a quick death either. The real money is snuggled right in between the two, right in between the cracks. The fat, sick, and nearly dead who live a poor, extended quality of life, propped up by therapies never designed to cure them of their actual ailment because they do not address the actual cause of the disease, right? They only treat symptoms. They don't go to the underlying cause of what is wrong with said patient. So that's why there's a profit in chronic illness. That's why they never push out a cure for cancer, right? I remember as a kid, I'm seeing all these cancer patients, within St. Jude, the St. Jude commercials, family members dying of cancer. I'm like, why have they not? We have all this technology. We have all this technology to do all this, to do all these miraculous things, but we can't seem to find or talk about or implement a cure for cancer. Right. And now I understand why. There's profit in chronic illness. There's no profit in curing cancer, curing diseases. If there was, there would be no need for doctors. There would be no need for the pharmaceutical industry. All these departments and all these uh facilities went up crashing down. Uh all these conglomerates would lose money in an instant. They would collapse in an instant. So there's a profit in chronic illness for sure. H2O, the perfect solution. It's always important for us to be drinking our water because the body is made up of 75% water. The many problems of dehydration. Researchers have concluded that up to 75% of Americans suffer from dehydration. Right? That's another leading cause of death is dehydration. All these different foods that we eat can dehydrate the body. That's why you ever notice when you are eating certain foods and you become so dehydrated, you just got to drink a whole bunch of water afterwards. These foods, they have no hydration within them. That's why they dehydrate the body. That's why you got to drink all this water. You got to drink all these fluids because these foods have no hydration within them. They have no water content because these are fake Franken foods. Dehydration also causes sleep deprivation, which depletes the production of melatonin in the liver. Melatonin is the hormone that regulates your sleep-wake cycles. Right. So when we hydrate ourselves, that's when we start to have that melatonin production. As long as getting vitamin D from the sun, this regulates our melatonin, right? Our production of melatonin. On average, we sweat out about 2 cups of water per day through exercise and hot weather. We also lose about 6 cups via defecation and urination. Like I said, our bodies are made up of 75% water. So that's why it's important for us to replenish that by drinking a certain amount of water. It's important for us to replenish this by drinking more water on a consistent basis. Preferred dosage, drink half your body weight. So however much you weigh, take half of your body weight, and that's how much water you need to be consuming. Start by drinking water as soon as you wake up, in between meals, and during exercise. You can drink water before you go to bed, but if you don't want to be getting up all throughout the night, getting up, using the bathroom, then you might not want to do that. Drinking water also helps with providing clear skin if you suffer from acne. It does wonders for the skin as well. So these are the type of water I drink. Avion water, this is natural mineral water and also has a 7.2 pH balance. So this is good water to drink. There are many other different types of water, but this is the type of water that I drink. Mainly right now I've been using a water filter, the pure water filter. So tap water is treated harshly with chemicals and then pressured through aged piping, right? With all the fluoride in the water, the tap water, the water going through the aging pipes. So pure water filter reduces heavy metals like lead and other contaminants, right? So I'll highly, advise you all to invest in a water filter. If you can't, get any other type of water, I highly advise you all to get some sort of filtered water or invest in a water filter. And I got this from Amazon, by the way. I got the Avion water and the pure water filter from Amazon. So I got both of these from Amazon. Caffeine is a powerful drug indeed. Caffeine is considered a drug. Caffeine is classified as a central nervous system stimulant because of the temporary boost in energy and alertness. So, we get our morning cup of coffee before we go to work, before we go to school, to keep our energy level high, to keep to keep the energy going. But this is only a temporary energy boost, right? The energy comes crashing down after a while. So this is only a central nervous system stimulant, right? So that's why, getting sunlight, getting vitamin D, grounding, putting your bare feet in the ground, eating healthy, fasting. If you do all these things, you won't even have the need for caffeine. So caffeine overstimulates the kidneys to produce a diuretic effect, leading to dehydration. So this is the importance of digestive rest. I can't stress this enough. We need to have some sort of digestive rest. And this is when this is when things such as fasting come into play. When it comes to overall health, digestion plays a big part. The digestive system is one of the 11 systems that our body operates under, such as the lymphatic system, the skeletal system, things of this nature. The digestive system requires the most energy expenditure. It is considered your second brain because, in very much the same way the brain transmits signals, responds to stimuli, and records experiences, the second brain does exactly the same. For example, 95% of all serotonin, which is considered the happy molecule, is located and manufactured in the gut. Chemicals like dopamine are found rich in abundance in the gut. One of the most effective ways that you can utilize in your life for digestive restoration is fasting. I have fasted numerous times throughout my journey and still am. I reap the benefits of it and I feel better afterwards. Right. So, there may be a point in time where I just need to reset. I need to heal my body. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I may go off on my diet. I might eat the wrong foods, might start eating animal products here and there. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. So I feel like, there needs to be a reset, reset in the body. So, especially at the beginning of your fast, you might feel uh discombobulated. You might feel like you can't go on. Your head might hurt, your stomach might hurt. You might feel weak, and all these sorts of different things. It's important for you to take baby steps along the way, especially if it's your first time fasting. But 9 times out of 10, when you're fasting, you know, you're going through a withdrawal system. This is called a withdrawal. Your body's going through a withdrawal phase, right? So, there are many different types of fasts that you can go on, but 9 times out of 10, after a fast, you feel a whole lot better. You start to have, a clarity of mind. You feel light, you have more energy, and things of this sort, right? So it's always important for you to be implementing some type of fasting practice into your regimen. The purpose of fasting is to let our digestive system rest and to let our body heal. We eat so much on a consistent basis that we never let our stomach take a breather. They tell us to eat 3 meals a day, but that's not only killing our health, but also putting more money into the food business. Think about it. You're eating 3 full course meals every day. Your stomach is constantly digesting food. Some go undigested depending on what you're eating, and this will lead to health problems and a slow death, right? Fasting, it can slow the aging process. You live longer. You have a better chance of living longer. Fasting is definitely, the cure to. I believe fasting can cure all diseases. Fasting can cure cancer. We wouldn't even need, an outside drug, some type of magic pill, miracle pill. Fasting can do all that. Fasting isn't talked about much in the medical industry, and that's for a reason, right? So fasting can do great wonders. Fasting can cure all diseases. Fasting can cure all types of cancer. So I would recommend implementing some type of fasting regimen into your daily life. So there are many ways to fast. You got intermittent fasting, you got extended fasting, only certain days of the week, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, fasting on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, eating one day and fasting the next day, eating 2 days and fasting the next 2 days, water fast, dry fast, juice fast, fruit fast, smoothie fast, etc. There are many different fasting practices. Try to implement one that works best for you and your body. Try some of these out for yourself and see which one or ones work best for you. So let's get on to the hygienic products. This is the problem with personal hygiene products. Every time you brush your teeth, roll on deodorant, apply makeup, moisturize your skin with lotion, or use any other hygiene product, you are consuming that product. Just like when we're eating certain types of food, when we're applying these hygienic products, we're consuming these products as well. Or when we're putting lotion onto our skin, our bodies, our face, that stuff is being absorbed into the skin and being absorbed into the bloodstream. So that's why we have to pay attention to the type of hygienic products that we use. The long and complicated list of ingredients on the label is one of the greatest contributors to the decline in health. Many of the ingredients in beauty products today contain industrial chemicals that range from reproductive toxins, carcinogens, hormone disruptors, pesticides, and heavy metals. If you were to take the anatomy of a woman's breast in connection with the lymphatic system under the armpit, you will be able to see how they are connected. The lymph nodes under the armpit are the first place breast cancer is likely to spread. They are primarily located in the knee, groin, and armpit. These are the areas where we sweat the most to remove toxins. Using anti-perspirant deodorants reduces perspiration and thus causes toxins to build up, which causes cancer to thrive. In addition, most deodorants contain cancer-causing paraben chemicals that mimic estrogen activity. Studies have shown that in 99% of breast cancer patients, paraben esters were found. These same chemicals are also present in shampoos, conditioners, shaving gels, toothpaste, lotions, makeup, and food additives. So these are some of the chemicals to avoid that you may find in deodorant, shampoos, toothpaste, soaps, different bars of soaps that we use, parabens, PEG compounds, PHA, coal tar dyes, certain fragrances, mineral oils, PPD, talc, all these different chemicals that we need to be avoiding within the hygienic products. So just like I advise you all to check the ingredient labels on certain foods that we eat, we need to be doing the same things in regards to the types of hygienic products that we use. So it has been estimated that women who wear makeup on a daily basis absorb roughly 5 pounds of chemicals into their bodies annually. So like I said, the makeup, the women wearing makeup, certain facial products, lotions that we put on our face, all this stuff is seeping into our skin and seeping into our bloodstream. While I love women who love to look glamorous and beautiful, I do, I would like to encourage you all to take an organic approach through plant-based nutrition, fitness, and selecting natural products that are consistent with human biology. Taking care of the internal will only magnify the external. I appreciate the women. I love women who love to take care of themselves, who, care about their appearance, looking good, looking beautiful. I love women that do that. But at the same time, when we take care of the internal, the external will only magnify because of the internal, right? As within, so without, as above, so below. So when we take pride in our inner world, when we take pride in our inner health and our inner beauty, it has no choice but to magnify itself on the outside. So I encourage, not just women, but men too, right? When we take care of ourselves on the inside, it has no choice but to magnify on the outside. Too many times we tend to focus on the outside with makeup and weave and uh, clothes, jewelry, trying to magnify the outside, but we are dead spiritually on the inside. We are dead internally. We don't take the time to express ourselves internally in order for it to magnify externally. So these are some of the products that I use currently. I wasn't gonna leave y'all hanging. Cure shampoo. I also use the conditioner as well. This is vegan shampoo, vegan conditioner. That's that doesn't have the harmful chemicals that's being found in regular shampoo and conditioner. You got One with Nature bar soap, organic soap, Dead Sea mineral soap, hemp's lotion, Himalaya toothpaste, fluoride free. We have all this fluoride in the toothpaste, but this type of toothpaste has no fluoride in it, fluoride free. Rocking Green dirty diaper. This is vegan laundry detergent. Laundry detergent has a lot of chemicals in it as well, so this is a very suitable substitution for your laundry detergent. Uh, Kale and green tea moisturizer, face moisturizer. I use this. It does works. It does a great work on my face. Does a great work on my skin. Has natural ingredients, kale and green tea ingredients within it. Mayors dishwashing liquid has all the different minerals and doesn't have all them toxins and chemicals that you would see in the other dishwashing liquid. Native deodorant, paraben free. Like I said, there's a link between breast cancer, uh, the link between women's armpits. Need some water. God damn. Can't even talk right now. I've been talking so long. But there's a direct link between, the woman's armpits and breast cancer, right? Different deodorants have all these chemicals, parabens, all these toxins. So I highly recommend, trying out the native deodorant. This is what I use too. So these are some of the products that I've been using. You can do your own research and find out which other products work best for you. But these are just some of my recommendations that I highly recommend that you use. So I know this has been a long video. This has definitely been a long video. Hopefully you gain some insights and some knowledge. But in conclusion, so I have shown you the benefits of holistic healing and health through a plant-based diet. Hopefully this has encourage you all to take your health seriously as you will reap the benefits of a happy, healthy life. This doesn't mean that you necessarily need to adopt a plant-based diet. Everybody is different. Like I say, everybody's body is different. So do whatever is best for you. As long as you're eating healthy and striving to do whatever it takes to take care of yourself with whatever you have is all that matters. It's all about baby steps. We're not, you know, if you decide to implement or take on a plant-based diet, it's not going to happen overnight. That's why I say, you uh might take this fasting approach where you eat one day, fast another, eat one day, fast another, then 2 days, eat 2 days, fast 2 days. It's all about shrinking the stomach. And once you start doing that, the stomach starts to shrink. And your desire for food becomes less, right? So, you might start, eating chicken, if you were eating chicken, eating meat, eating poultry, eating pork, you might, start off slow. Like I said, it's all about baby steps. And then over time, you start implementing, you might convert over to become a pescatarian where you're no longer eating chicken and chicken wings and pork. You're eating seafood, right? Then you might become, convert from a pescatarian. Then you might start becoming, start implementing more plants and vegetables, things this nature. So like I said, it's all about baby steps. It wasn't just an easy transition for me either. Because I told myself, I never thought I'd see the day where I would not eat chicken. I can't see myself not eating chicken, not eating meat, but I made that transition. You have to make sacrifices. You have to make certain sacrifices in order to get where you need to go. So do whatever you can right now and work your way up to the ladder. Work your way up the ladder. I give you all the information on healthy living. But if you still want to eat the same comfort foods, by all means do so. You can eat what you want to eat. But remember, they might make you happy in the short term. But it will eventually make you sad in the long run with health problems, frequent hospital visits, and medical bills. So we only think short term. We only think about how these foods make us feel in the short term. But when we start thinking about how these foods will affect us in the long run, that's when our minds start to change. Start thinking long term instead of short term. It wasn't a smooth transition for me either. And I still have a lot of learning and discipline to go. So we've all eaten for fun. Now it's time to eat to live because we all have missions to complete on this planet. And you can't do that if you're sick. So we've all eaten for fun, including me. I've eaten all the food that I could think of, comfort foods. Food brings a lot of people joy. But especially us, as people within consciousness, we have to start, thinking about things differently. We can't, change, humanity as a whole. We can't change the whole world in one day. That's this unrealistic. But we have to be the example. We have to be the examples of our family. We have to be the examples of our siblings, our spouse, our kids. We have to set an example for the world because everybody's a reflection of us. So we have to set the standard. We have to set the example, for ourselves, right? So we all eat for fun. It's time to eat to live now. Like Dr. Sabi said, we have to eat to live. We have to eat to live and not to die. So I always include my sources in my PowerPoints. I always include my sources of where I get my information from. This is not out the ass. I always show my sources of where I get my information from. So for more in-depth information, check out Education Over Medication by Dr. Bobby J. Bryce. Right. So check this book out if you haven't. I given you the main sauce, the gist of it within this PowerPoint. But if you want to go a little bit more deep in depth into this information, I highly recommend you all to check this book out. All right, so there you have it, folks. This is the dangers of the dark side of the food and drug industry. Hopefully, you guys have, learned something from this video, taking some valuable information. You might have written some notes down, jotting some notes down on your on paper or your phone. But thank you guys for if you stick to the very end. I appreciate you all. I know this is a long video, but appreciate you guys for sticking to the end. And like I said, everybody's different. You don't have to implement a plant-based diet. I've shown you the information and the statistics and the details on the benefits of a plant-based diet and why you shouldn't be eating meat and all these other different things. So do whatever works best for you, and just take care of yourself. Take care of your mind, body, soul, because your body will thank you for it, and your soul will thank you for it. So Appreciate you guys for watching, and till next time. And always remember, all power resides from within. And always keep the faith because God in the universe is always working for you. Take care, guys, and God bless.